Hey everyone, it's Alan. You feel foggy this morning? Have you ever woken up and been not quite sure where the day is going to go, but you wish that you could take hold of it, make it even better, optimize your morning? Well, I have a podcast for you. I have Rachel and Greg in the booth to talk all about something new that I know absolutely nothing about. This podcast is all about brain mapping. Welcome to the Inspired Intentions podcast, and welcome Greg and Rachel back on again. Rachel's going to host this one, folks.
Oh, Alan, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, super excited to be here again.
Yes, and it's funny, listeners, we were trying to figure out what was the best way to go into this show, and Alan just jumped right in with his expert podcasting. So thank you so much for doing that.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. And as Alan mentioned today, we have a topic called brain mapping, which is something new both to Greg and me. It's new to Skyterra, and we're excited to share more information about it and let you know kind of what it looks like here, not only at Skyterra, but at Skyterra Young Adult. Greg, you're a frequent flyer for the Inspired Intentions podcast, but just in case there's anyone who has not yet met you or heard from you, could you tell our listeners who you are?
Yeah, my name is Greg Osler. I am a licensed clinical social worker and licensed clinical addiction specialist. I've been doing this work for about 15 years. I'm supposed to be a dentist, but trauma happens in my life, and I had to pivot, and I started therapy when I was 24 years old, trying to figure out dental schools, and fell in love with therapy. So here I am all these years later. Joined Skyterra back in 2020, and from there created the Young Adult program in 2021 with our team.
So nice to have you back.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here.
Yeah. And so who better to talk about brain mapping than you, Greg? And just, with the work that you do in both of our programs, not only are you helping to implement it at our Young Adult program, but you are the person who every week speaks about brain mapping here at Skyterra to our Skyterra wellness guests. So what is this? What are we doing here?
Well, what we've found is that a lot of people come into Skyterra wanting answers. They're putting all this effort into their lives. They're trying to do all the right things. They're trying to move their bodies. They're trying to eat right. They're trying to build healthy connections and figure out sleep. And something's still missing. And so we've teamed up with Neurologics, a company that's been doing this for many, many years, focused on peer-reviewed research that helps provide direction around some of the brain stuff. The brain difficulties, some of those little moments where you're not really sure what to do, and self-reporting in therapy becomes one of our biggest tools. Whatever you bring to therapy, whatever you report, is kind of where we go. And this says, hey, that's not quite enough. We know there's underlying issues. We know there's underlying concerns, pieces that we haven't quite been able to see yet. So jumping into brain mapping really digs into the brain a little bit deeper and allows us to understand some of that unseen, so that we can get answers for ourselves and our guests.
Yeah, and for Skyterra Wellness guests, it is an add-on service. You can add it on if you'd like to. But for Young Adult, we've done something different, and we have built it right into the program. Can you talk a little bit more about why that's so important for those guests specifically to have it?
Yeah, I would love for every guest to be able to do this. I think it's super critical information to get. But if we can kind of disrupt some of those patterns in young adulthood, I think we have a different opportunity to help them build structure around routines, consistencies, patterns. And what we're seeing is in that demographic, that young adult piece, a lot of it could be some of the COVID disruption, could just be the college disruption, the generational shift. I think I've talked about it on the podcast previously, but that book, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah.
Just that whole population of young adults who are missing some type of executive functioning, life skill, confidence, whatever it is, because of mental health stuff. Being able to kind of dive into that, where these young adults don't have the same ability to report what adults can report, less experience, less lived experience. I think it helps them find a little bit more clarity with our team, because we're hitting a little bit harder at young adult. That longer term program, the more structure to the program, a little less hand-holding at Skyterra Wellness and a lot more at young adult, more of a container.
Yeah.
So giving it to them as included in that program really helps us as a team dig into the real pieces that they need to work on as they do their journey.
Thanks, Greg. And I should have, listeners, if you've been listening to our podcast for a while, or if you have been to Skyterra, you probably know the difference between Skyterra and Skyterra Young Adult, but just in case this is the first episode you're listening to, Skyterra Wellness is our wellness retreat for adults 18 and older. About 20 minutes away, we have a smaller, separate campus specifically for young adults, 18 to 29 years old. It takes the same principles of wellness and our pillars of wellness that we teach at Skyterra and incorporates it for just a younger group of guests who may need more structure in their day. So let's get a little bit more into the brain mapping, Greg. For someone who's unfamiliar with this technology, which I would certainly put myself into that group, how does brain mapping help us understand the brain compared to traditional assessments? And I know one of the things that Neurologics talks about is that they measure at the speed of thought, which is an interesting way to portray it. So what is that?
Yeah. So Neurologics brain mapping very much is an in-body for the brain. It's a deeper dive into the psychology, the physiology of the brain itself, some of the neurons, some of the synapses, what's firing, what's not firing. But the biggest piece that this does is through an approach very similar to operant conditioning, where we engage in some type of activity, some type of game, some type of question or problem solving, and then it assesses where the brain is functioning, what neurons are firing, and it's doing that in the moment. So in that second thought when it happens, being able to interpret that from the technology side of things, and then use that information to then create the next question or problem for the brain to solve. A lot of it's that process of unlearning and rewiring in its experience, but it's also that deeper assessment that is non-invasive that allows us to, again, not talk through these pieces, but allow the brain to do what it's going to do at its current capacity. So we can have a very deep conversation about this, but keeping it pretty surface level to help people understand. We're measuring brain function in real time, being able to really see, again, what's firing, where it's firing, and then using that information to assess lobe differentials or differences or discrepancies, and then creating a treatment plan that will help us kind of create structure and routine with kind of where we're going to pinpoint what and where we're going to work.
And the equipment is a cap.
Kind of like a swim cap.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of cords coming off of it to a little device, and then that connects to a computer that then houses all that information and then processes it there.
Okay. And I know you mentioned in-body. Here at Skyterra, when guests arrive, they have the option to step onto our in-body machine, which measures body composition, it measures muscle percentage, it measures how much water is in your body, visceral fat, etc. It's a very extensive body composition measurement machine. And so when you're comparing that to in-body, especially when you're talking with guests here on campus, does that help them understand kind of what the brain map involves?
Yeah, I think there's a lot where, just like a scale, you can see a body, you can get on that scale and it can give you a number, but it doesn't dive into all the details that are happening internally. And so this brain mapping really allows us to dig and uncover some of those pieces you don't get to see from the outside.
Okay. So when we're talking about the young adults, especially because this brain mapping is built into that program, young adults often face unique developmental differences. How does this data that we get from the brain map help normalize those differences and help them build independence? What does it measure? Yeah,
so there's so much to this conversation where we see these young adults or even grown adults who are putting a ton of effort into their daily lives but not seeing the outcomes. And so being able to utilize that deeper approach, we're allowing this brain map to measure processing speed and efficiency, attention and cognitive flexibility, inhibition and impulse control, stress reactivity and recovery, and emotion regulation capacity. So it's really about brain function and how capable we are, not how much effort we're putting into it. And I think some of the battle is that we look so much at the outcome of some of our experiences rather than the process of getting there. And so this really uncovers what are we missing, where are some of those deficits around executive functioning or even life skill experience. And the big battle that we have is we know that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so if you have experience in some of these areas, you're able to practice, but practice makes proficient. And if we're not practicing, we're not going to become proficient. But also getting into the brain map allows us to really understand why we're not. Like what is the obstacle to becoming proficient? Is it a capability? Is it a brain function piece? And can we learn how to do it? I think the fear or trepidation that I think a lot of people have around testing in general does create a hindrance, because when you self-report, you're telling what I have seen that people come to me as a therapist and say, they tell me what they think I want to hear. And so we have to challenge all of it with curiosity. And so this allows that curiosity to be for all of us, the treatment team, the guest, the family, to really help kind of uncover what's happening deeper without being able to have to report it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One thing we talk about often at Skyterra is that transformation doesn't end when your stay does. And it doesn't have to fade when life gets busy. That's why we created the Skyterra at Home app, a personalized wellness app designed to help you stay connected, supported, and consistent longer after you leave campus. Skyterra at Home brings our holistic approach to wellness right into your home. Inside the app, you'll find expert coaching, fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, lifestyle, habits, all designed to help you maintain momentum in a way that feels realistic and sustainable. You'll have access to tailored workouts created by the same team who supports our guests, nutritional guidance and recipes from our registered dietitian and culinary staff, and easy-to-use tools to help you set goals, track progress without pressure. And just as important as the content is the connection. Skyterra at Home allows you to engage with coaches and like-minded community, sharing wins, asking questions, and staying inspired every step of the way. Just to let you understand that a little bit, you have access to a Skyterra staff member anytime you would like through the app. It's pretty cool. Whether you're continuing your progress made at the retreat or deepening your wellness journey over time, Skyterra at Home ensures you're never doing it alone. If you're ready to bring Skyterra into your everyday life, you can find Skyterra at Home in the App Store or visit skyterrawellness.com/at-home.
And when it comes to, so for guests going to young adult who may have had that brain map, does it help with what their treatment plan looks like?
Yeah. Treatment planning becomes a big piece for young adults. I think when they look at themselves as the problem, the family is kind of projecting this idea that, hey, the young adult has something wrong, but we've done therapy, we've done medications, we've done all these things. You know, this helps dig underneath all of that to look at brain function as a whole, but also be able to give a little more tangible kind of goals or objectives for these young adults. I think treatment planning becomes kind of ambiguous because we don't often know what we're doing in therapy. We're just talking or showing up and doing these assignments. And so this does give a little more of a path, something to walk that the young adult and our team can really come in, and multidisciplinary approach to it being, it's not just in therapy, but it's also in programming. It's on hikes, it's in rec, it's in culinary, it's in all the different aspects we have, but helps them to build those skills with hands-on tangibles. Becomes a little more feasible for them to build hope and confidence and resilience. But also I think bigger piece is that it matches expectations with capacity. It helps us understand that, well, are we pushing too hard? And a big phrase that I use in therapy a lot is it I can't or I won't? Is it a resistance piece or is it an incapacity? And I think there's a big maybe blank there in a lot of situations because we got to observe, but it gives us opportunity to observe and then also really see these changes and celebrate each of those baby steps.
I like that. I can't versus I won't. And I love how this also impacts not only what our guests are working on in therapy, but what they might be working on in the gym and fitness and hiking and learning culinary skills, and learning mindfulness. What, just as an example, just because I'm curious, so what if someone says, I don't want to go on a hike today, or don't want to go with the group, or I can't do that, versus I won't do that? How might now with this brain mapping information, how does that look differently for not only the guest, but for the professional that's going on that hike with them?
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces we see is the confidence is built because we have greater understanding of what's happening in the brain. So that directly supports nervous system regulation. So we're going to see less of that reactivity, but also more of the understanding of, okay, is it I can't or I won't? What's the resistance about? Because also if I had a bad session, I don't want to go on a hike, become some of that normal.
Yeah.
Or I did poorly in the gym, or I don't like the results, or I didn't like what I ate. Like there's all these reasons, but also I think it's a different conversation that helps us understand where are we coming from, what has been happening, and it takes away the why. Like, why are you being resistant? Why are you freaking out? Why are you doing these things? And none of that really matters, because I think when you go to young adult or even an adult, you go to myself and someone says, hey, why are you doing this? I'm going to say whatever I think is right. But this objectively gives us details as to what is happening, where in the brain, the resistance patterns, the moods, the irritabilities, without being able to really, I don't want to take the words from the young adults. I want them to be able to learn to say how they're feeling. But also I think it provides clarity for the team to be able to say, okay, this is a normal part of where this person is with decreased resilience or decreased patience or decreased regulation and decreased ability to voice some of those pieces because of some of those deficits, but not a shame-based approach, not a, hey, you're doing it wrong, or hey, you're a bad person, but a, hey, we got to keep working on this and let's get on that hike. So challenge by choice, helping them choose the right thing, allow us to be part of that piece because they want control. I want them to have control.
Yeah.
But also one of the battles we run into is that control's not really a thing in a lot of these situations. It's a resistance or a choice that we make. And so helping the team understand the communication, those patterns, but also what did we see this last week? What have we seen over these last 3 weeks? What have we seen over the last 2 months that really helps us to build relationships and rapport? Because the connection, I think, is the bigger piece in that moment where if a stranger comes in and starts telling this kid what to do, or someone comes and tells me what to do as an adult, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And so there's that piece of it. A lot of it's just natural.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do everything, but in those moments, how do we support them? How do we help them? And then bringing them back to their treatment plan and what are their goals for the week?
Just such a deeper level of understanding for everybody, for the guest, for the parents, for the team.
Yeah.
One of the things that the brain map measures is impulse control and emotional regulation. Why are those so critical, especially for young adult success in the world?
I think there's a lot of the reality of brain development and how that has been a huge hindrance on why we're not doing productive stuff, why we're not launching into adulthood, as they say. And one thing we gotta kind of pull back and recognize is that brain development truly is a huge hindrance. Because research is showing late 20s for brain development, a little bit earlier for women, a little later for men. But also we have what's called an amygdala. This part of the brain that is all about the reactivity, all about that control factor, and all about that instant gratification. The reality that this amygdala develops at 15 years old, where the rest of the brain is late 20s, allows for some of that emotional dysregulation, emotional reactivity to be a natural part of that transition because what's happening at 15? Young people are going through maturation. They are friendships, identities, life experiences, and some of them like already experienced trauma, already experienced chaos, already experienced grief. And for an undeveloped brain, that's hard to interpret. And so it just sits there until you're able to, and then it becomes the shame base or this frustration. And so really being able to identify how we support the amygdala in that process through regulation is a little bit deeper because I think these young adults have their moods. I have my moods. You have your moods. And it's that moment of what's it really about? And so really bringing clarity to what's happening and also understanding that quick fix, that hit feels so good in the moment, even if it's milliseconds or seconds long. I want to re-up every time I lose that feeling. And so I chase that high, if you will. And I think that's where whether it's shopping or eating or drugs or connection with friends or sitting on the couch playing your phone, it's all about that reward system in there that gets in the way. But also I think these young adults know what to do. I think they have the skills, but I think it's that practice piece that's missing. They haven't been in environments or haven't been willing to sit in some of that discomfort. I think we have it with adults. We have it with a lot of us and a lot of it's just that idea of I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I'm going to do what is comfortable. And usually that's going to be the unproductive, the impulsive, that immediate thing because the cortisol in the body wants us to be safe and survive rather than be productive or adaptive in some of those situations. So I think it's delaying some of that, which if you're delaying my gratification and my joy, it's going to be frustrating for me and you as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What about expectations? So at our young adult program especially, we work with parents along with a guest throughout their time at Skyterra Young Adult. And I'm sure parents have specific expectations. The guests are going to have specific expectations. How does having all of this data from the brain map help align expectations of everybody with someone's actual brain capacity?
Yeah. So if we're asking a young adult to perform a task that they have never done before, I think we're looking at the I can't. But also at the same time, if they're not willing to try, if they're not understanding that it's going to be a challenging experience, if they're not willing to take a step into the darkness, then I think it becomes a little more difficult because I'm not going to force them to do anything. And I think in that battle, understanding that when you come to our program, the expectation you're participating in everything, that you are not avoiding, that you are not sleeping all day, that you are not continuing the patterns that you kind of come with.
Yeah.
And this is the same for young adults and adults, right? We push adults to do the same thing. But in the environment of young adult, really helping these young adults to slow down, being able to kind of take a step back and learn again how to be a kid for a little bit, right? Put responsibility aside, put relationships aside. We're not working, we're not going to school, but we're here to really, I think, take a deep dive into what is happening in adulthood, but also what do I want? Where am I going? And if everything's the resistance of I'm doing it because my mom said I have to do it, or I'm doing it because Greg said I have to do it, well, it's not going to work. And I think being able to help young adults align their own expectations, identify what they want out of the program, and it not be this coercion with mom and dad, then I think these young adults have a really cool chance of being able to understand what young adulthood is really about. And sometimes it is about being a kid again, being in an environment where they don't have to be an adult yet. But also, it's pushing mom and dad aside a little bit as well. Being able to help mom and dad understand that the enablement, the enmeshment, the entitlement is part of the pattern in an environment. And it's not about a flaw or an issue or a problem, but we're all working to realign. Where in adulthood, what do you want what does it look like to be successful? What does your young adulthood look like? Do you want to go to school? Do you want to go to work? Do you want to learn a trade? Do you want to have a relationship? They're all opportunities at this point, because we pull back and we're not engaging in that. But it's also learning the skills in order to communicate, learning the skills to be able to have those conversations and interview skills and life skills where, again, if we ask these young adults to do something they've never done before, it's really hard for them to say, yes, I will go do it, because that's motivation, that's confidence, that's courage. And I think that there's a lot of trepidation in being a young adult. I think there's a lot of trepidation in stepping into adulthood. Yeah. Because when I'm 17, 16 years old, I want all the freedoms and fun of adulthood. But then I become an adult and I'm like, ooh, this was painted wrong. This is not what I expected. And I think that's where some of those expectations are kind of aligned. It's what have I known for the last 10 years of my life as a young adult? Have mom and dad been there? Have they not? Have they given me everything I want? Have they made me work for it? Have I? And that is going to differ from family to family. And I think we have young adults who come in and they're kind of stuck in that mentality of mom and dad give me everything, I don't have to work for it. And others that are saying, I worked since I was 15 years old and I have all this opportunity. And so taking away that shame, I think, really pulls us into being able to use that report, that outcome of where are the deficits, how's the brain working, but also helping these young adults create their own expectations for themselves so that they are holding themselves to those standards rather than it being me or their parents, that accountability piece.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really important to us here at Skyterra and Skyterra Young Adult is just the size of our community. We are purposefully small, both at Skyterra Wellness Retreat and especially for our young adult program. And so we've never done kind of a one-size-fits-all. But what I love about this, especially for young adult, is that it allows us to tailor that treatment plan even more. It was never one-size-fits-all, but now even more so. It's so much customized for each guest for what they're going through. And I just want to move over to Skyterra Wellness. So we spent a lot of time talking about how this is incorporated into the young adult program and why it's so powerful there. But we, as we mentioned at the beginning, are offering it to our guests at Skyterra Wellness. So, we get guests of all ages at Skyterra Wellness from 18 to 80 plus. For an older adult who might be dealing with things like brain fog or career stress or concerns about cognitive longevity, how does a brain map help them?
Yeah, so I think it takes away the guesswork. Just like for young adults, it helps these older adults figure out what the underlying piece is. And I think some of that is understanding or identifying some of the physiological roots. I think, and we look at aging or transition into older adulthood, brain fog, lack of memory, poor processing speeds. I think it all becomes identified as a normal part of aging. And I think the battle is that it doesn't have to be, but it is part of the way the brain works. Our goal at Skyterra is about longevity. We want us to be able to live the best life we can as long as we can, understanding that some of these pieces are going to happen. So brain mapping has been able to identify some of those precursors or markers of some of those potentials for Alzheimer's, dementia, similar pieces around addiction or traumatic brain injuries. Some of those pieces we don't get to see until it's already happening. And while we can't necessarily prevent any of it, we can certainly start providing some clarity and skills around how to adjust or adapt and support with it. And so moving along with it allows for us to really align that effort with capacity as well. Where again, older adults, brain fog, transitions. We have a lot of we have a lot of adults who come into our program, and they are looking for understanding around that transition into post-work, retirement, or family roles, or relationship roles, and those changes become pretty devastating if it's something I haven't experienced before. And so using that brain map, it identify some of those brain patterns there as well for these grown adults. That just like the young adults helps optimize nervous system regulation, helps reduce some of that blame, but also brings a little bit of awareness to how capable am I at this point in my life. Just like how physical can I be at this point in my life? What's my body working? And that in-body connection there allows it to be, depending on my body, depending on my brain, depending on my mindset, depending on my community. There's a lot that I can do, but isn't I can't or I won't. Just with older adults too.
Yeah.
It's because when you feel stuck, you feel stuck. And stuck is not a great place to sit. And that battle is, I don't want to feel stuck, but I am stuck. And so what do I do about it? And so this helps realign some of that piece. Because again, I think there's so much where we're putting in all this effort. We're trying so hard to do the right thing. And we're trying to eat right and move right and sleep right. But for some reason, we're not losing weight, or we're not defogging, or we're not decreasing our stress. It's actually almost adverse, where the more I try, the worse it gets. Becomes some of that mentality. And so helping to really challenge some of that stuck feeling with some trial by error type of approach to kind of what can I do about it, but also that clarity of what's happening in the brain. So,
Greg, thank you so much. This has been great. I think we should do a follow-up to this after we have a little bit more experience with our brain maps. And listeners, I'm sure you may have many questions about this. If you have questions and you want to send them in, I would send them to
inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com.
There he is. Thanks, Alan. And we will direct those questions to Greg. We can even answer them on air in our next episode.
Awesome.
So thank you both so much. And thank you, listeners.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.